Joining me now is the Democratic mayor of the city of Los Angeles, Karen Bass. Mayor Bass, welcome back to the Sunday Show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back, Jonathan.
So many are comparing the Tyre Nichols video to the Rodney King video. You were an activist then, and the riots that erupted then happened in your neighborhood. Is the comparison an apt comparison?
Well, I think in some ways it is. I mean, I think what is similar is the fact that you saw a mob of extremely angry officers. In the case of Tyre, they ran to subdue him, and with Rodney King, it was cars. But what was in common was their anger. The other thing that was dramatically different is the fact that the police chief, who I commend, fired the officers immediately and charges happened immediately. You know, with Rodney King, video cameras were brand new. The only thing that is different now versus generations and generations of this type of abuse is the technology. So thank goodness for that.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, Madam Mayor, what would you say to those who point to the fact that the 5 police officers involved here are Black, and that's evidence that this isn't racially motivated?
Well, I think in this instance, you could still question whether it was racially motivated. But in this instance, the officers were African American. What it reveals is a fundamental problem with policing in our country, which is not new to African Americans. And African Americans will tell you their exchanges with Black officers don't always go so well. But I'm happy to say that the Congressional Black Caucus, with its new leader, Stephen Horsford, is raising again the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act and has called for negotiations, because clearly this is a national phenomenon. And until we get to the fundamentals of policing in the United States, Jonathan, there's 18,000 police departments and 18,000 methods of policing. The profession needs to be accredited, standards needs to be imposed, and it's really not only a question of training, it is a fundamental question of leadership and culture.
Well, let's talk more about the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, because when you were in Congress, you shepherded that act to passage in the House. You were in an unusual arrangement. You were part of the group trying to broker a deal for it to get passed by the Senate. You weren't successful, but should Tyre Nichols be a catalyst for a renewed effort?
Absolutely. That brutal murder of that young man absolutely should be a new catalyst. And I'm hoping that that's exactly what the Black Caucus will lead. So let's see what happens. I mean, I know in this caucus, in this Congress, it might seem futile, but you know what? I mean, a couple of months ago, Congress, the House, and the Senate passed marriage equality. You would have never thought of that as well. So sometimes legislation that is unexpected passes at moments because of the catalyst and the outcry.
But back then, Democrats were in the majority in the House and the Senate, and the president being in the White House. This go around, the Republicans are in charge of the House. But when you were trying to broker a deal, and let's be real here, you were trying to broker a deal between Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina and Republican, and Senator Cory Booker, Democrat of New Jersey, and couldn't get it. Aren't the issues that were at play then still the issues at play now? I think qualified immunity was one of the big issues looming over those negotiations. Why should things be better this go around now the CBC is ginning up negotiations again?
Well, you know, this might seem far-fetched, but maybe because the racial angle was not so stark, maybe that will help the Republicans from not going in their corner. But, you know, we do have to continue to push. And although we were not successful nationally, I will tell you that laws changed around the country in a number of different states, a number of different local jurisdictions. So all of the protests that happened, the peaceful protests, I'm not talking about the ones that resulted in vandalism, but those protests really did serve as a catalyst in many locations. So I think it's critical that the CBC continue the national efforts while we continue to struggle locally as well as in different states.